Welcome, everyone, to the Pick Six podcast, where we discuss the biggest stories in college football. I'm your host, Chris Chang. And as a reminder, please, guys, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It would really help me out if you haven't done that already. It really will help us get this podcast out there and will hopefully help us grow, because who knows where this thing will go, right? Also, be sure to send us your story ideas to the pick6guys@gmail.com. I'll have the address below in the description. We want to know what you guys want us to see and talk about. Let us know. Where do we go? All right. Now, before we kick off the week one discussions, we must get a quote from the godfather of the sport himself, Mr. Josh Pate, who said, "No prediction is stupid this time of the year." And I couldn't agree more, because none of us know what's going to happen. But with that out of the way, let's get it going. It's called the Pick Six Podcast. I figured I would pick 6 games this week that you need to be watching, that you need to be paying attention to, and that I think will have ramifications for the entire season. And you obviously already know pick one is going to be number 10, Miami, playing number 6, Notre Dame, Catholics versus Convicts. I don't even know if I really like that name too much anymore, but I mean, it's kind of cool. It's kind of a relic of the past. I don't think there's that many people who are of the college age who even understand what this rivalry really is about. The last time they played, 2017, bloodbath, poor thing for Notre Dame. Came in here, got rocked by Hard Rock. You know, the stadium that's usually empty was electric, according to Kirk Herbstreit. Even former uh, quarterback from Notre Dame book said it was the loudest place he ever played, louder than Georgia and Michigan. Just gonna say, that's what an empty stadium will do. These two schools, these two programs, do not like each other. I wouldn't call it. Is it a rivalry? I don't know. I kind of like constitute a rivalry. I think we discussed it with Rudy last season. I feel like it's got to have proximity. It's got to have national stakes, and it's got to have a reoccurrence, right? We got one of those, right? National stakes, but we don't play them a lot. They refuse to play us. In the 90s, a little background for you guys. We played almost every year during the 80s. Notre Dame found themselves on the losing end quite a few times. We did as well, which is where the whole Catholics versus Convicts 30 for 30 came from. But then Notre Dame in the 90s said, no mas. No, thank you. And so this rivalry was put on hold for several years, damn near a decade, actually. And then it was recently brought up in the late 2000s in a bowl game. And then we played, like I said, in 2017, where we were the last victors. So it comes up again this year, and we are ready. And as we hop into this game, which I am so pumped for, I can't tell you how excited I am for this game. To me, this is the biggest game of the season. It's the biggest game of the year, despite contrary what a lot of the people believe about the last game we'll talk about, our 6th pick. I think it's going to be an amazing game. I think it's going to be electric. And hopefully, even though the forecast says it's going to be bad weather, hopefully we get some good weather. But let's talk about some questions heading into the game. My number one question right now, as a Miami fan, and watching this game is, they say where the QB goes is where the game will go, right? You're only as good as your QB usually, and your QB will usually lead you to victory. And that is CJ Carr ready? There was Kenny Menchie and him were in a bit of a QB battle heading into fall camp, which is something you really don't want, as a program. They say if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. But Marcus Freeman decided to pull the trigger and choose CJ Carr, which one of the things, again, as a Miami fan, I love reading into stuff like this. But one of the rumors was that despite it being so tight, and that a lot of the Notre Dame media had picked Kenny Menchie to actually win out. The reason why CJ Carr was picked is that they thought he might actually end up going into the transfer portal if he didn't win the starting job. Don't know if that's true, but even if there's an ounce of that, I don't know how that's going to go in a game where it could go either way. And if things go south for Notre Dame, what does that do to the locker room, right? If that rumor even has a sliver of credibility. Next question I have going into the game is, how good is Miami's secondary compared to Notre Dame's wide receiver room? These guys are no joke. While the quarterback for Notre Dame is in question, their wide receivers are not. These guys are veterans. They're good. They're tall. They're big. There's this guy Malachi from Virginia that they just got, who is enormous. I think he's like 6'4", 230. He's a big guy. He's ready to play. He's ready, I think, to make an impact on that team. Then you obviously have Faison and Greathouse, who starred in last year's national championship. So how is that going to work? Again, we have no idea. We believe as fans that the secondary has been upgraded, but what's it going to look like compared to Notre Dame's experienced and veteran wide receiver room? Next, on the inverse, how do Miami's young receivers fare against a proven Notre Dame secondary? This secondary only allowed a 52% completion rate per game last year, which was number one in the nation. It seems like we've got some guys who are ready to step up, but that is a hard thing to put on some young and some unproven shoulders of wide receivers that'll be making their start, on Sunday at the Rock. So that's a big question. I think that's probably the nation's number one question. I think that's almost every fan's number one question, which is how are these young and inexperienced receivers going to fare against this stout secondary? Next, something I just thought of. It sounds stupid, but I'm telling you, it plays a factor. We talk about it a lot in sports. How much of a factor is the environment going to impact the Fighting Irish? And, it's been roughly, I believe, when I was checking the weather reports this week, it's been about in the 70s, mid 70s, with very low humidity all week in South Bend. And they're going to get down there, and it's definitely not like that down here. I mean, it feels with the heat index like 98 plus, with 80% humidity. You're basically in a sauna the entire time. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys get acclimated from South Bend here. And also, again, I know it's the joke. It is what we are trolled for the most, our crowd attendance. But how will the crowd noise play a factor with a young QB, right? CJ Carr will be making his first start as the leader of Notre Dame. And I don't think this is going to be your Bethune Cookman crowd. I don't think this is going to be your Rutgers crowd. I think this is, or Troy crowd. Sorry to those programs, but I think we're going to have a packed house. It's going to be really, really electric. Next, something that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, but I think will play a crucial factor is how much will special teams factor into this game? Notre Dame had one of the best last season, specifically in their kick return and punt game. And Miami, sadly, we struggled across the board, minus our kicking game. Borregales really was the only sliver of hope we had in our special teams, but our kickoffs, our punts, not our strongest suits, especially that Louisville game where we were taking control and then quickly let them get a return. So we will see how we do on special teams. I think that's something I'm questioning. Keys to the game. Let's talk about this real quick. For Notre Dame, all right, CJ Carr just needs to be a game manager. No heroics, zero heroics. Hit the checkdowns. Don't try and do anything crazy. Don't try and force the ball. They call him a bit of a gunslinger, but he's your typical stereotypical pocket statue quarterback. Just be comfortable in the pocket. Hand the ball off, and keep handing the ball off. You've got the greatest running back in the league right now, and Jeremiah Love. Give him the ball and let him do. You get him some confidence. You hit up those three proven wide receivers for an explosive play from here and there to suck the life out of the stadium, and I think you're going to be looking really good. I think that's crucial for Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame running back room also needs to have a day. Again, we want CJ Carr to be a game manager. We don't want him to be a hero. That means the running back room needs to be rushing for tons of yards. If Jeremiah Love rushes for less than 80, 85 yards, I think it's going to be tough sledding. I mean, but don't forget about Jadarian Price and Anais Williams. They kind of have a committee too, with Jeremiah Love obviously being the head of that three-headed monster. These two guys are also a deadly tandem as well. And they love they love to throw to these guys. OC Mike Denbrock doesn't hesitate to throw to either of his wide receivers. And with Love and Williams combining for 46 catches, I can see a lot of check down swing passes to these guys to convert for the first down. Don't be surprised about that at all. And that was kind of a weakness for us last year as a defense. I mean, again, we're running a whole different scheme with a ton of new players. So I'm not sure if our weaknesses from last year will still be the same ones, but if there is any sort of hangover or any sort of residual issues from last year that bleed into this year, the quick swing passes were absolutely deadly for us, and they caused a lot of trouble. Um, I also think another key to the game for Notre Dame will be the O-line. I think they need to dominate. We always talk about the battles won in the trenches, right? Whoever wins the trenches is going to win the game. Duh. But I think in this case, when you've got such a young quarterback, you've got such a young leader ready to prove himself in such a hostile environment. And again, I know Notre Dame fans are probably like, it's not that hostile. We'll see come Sunday. You're going to want your O line stepping up, right? And then lastly, I think this is something that maybe hovering under the radar. My hope is that, the defense locks in on this and pays attention to this, but watch out for how they utilize Kenny Minchie. I mean, let's not just think that CJ Carr won this job outright and it was a clear and decisive decision. This was going into this, well, late last week before they decided on it. And I wouldn't be surprised if they use Kenny Minchie in those 3rd and 5 or less situations, right? You see 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, anything less than 5 yards, don't be surprised. They sneak out Kenny Minchie out there and they use him for his legs and the option to throw, right? Again, there's just when you have a quarterback who has that dual threat capability, it will absolutely spread and keep your defense honest. And so I would not be surprised if Notre Dame utilized Kenny Minchie in that way, especially like I said on the third downs. Moving over to Miami, keys to victory for Miami. I think this is pretty simple. Carson Beck and the wide receivers need to be in sync, right? I don't think when you have the number one offense last year, again, it would be unfair to compare Carson Beck to Cam Ward, to compare this year's wide receivers to the veterans we had last year, the proven talent we had last year. But again, when your defense is questionable, I think what you need to do is lean on something and you want to hope, again, your wide receivers can be in sync. There doesn't need to be like a ton of explosive plays. There doesn't need to be a ton of 20-plus-yard throws, but there needs to be a consistent chemistry throughout the game. We need to minimize drop balls. That was, Carson Beck's biggest issue last year with Georgia. They need to stay on the same page with routes. You know what I mean? Sometimes, someone will say, "Oh, I thought it was an out and it was a post or it was a go route, whatever it was." These things, first game, there's a lot of kinks, a lot of rust you've got to shake off in this first game. And my hope is that they're in sync, that they're on the same page, and that they can eliminate a lot of these first game jitters and mistakes that we see a lot of new quarterbacks and new wide receivers have in their first game. I think playing against two stud cornerbacks in Leonard Moore and Christian Gray, mistakes need to be at a minimum. We were just talking about that, limiting those mistakes. Um, Again, you catch they play Notre Dame likes to play a lot of man coverage, right? They're not going to get a lot of zone, which Carson likes to play against. Carson likes to fit it in those windows and where those missing spots in zone, and you're not going to have that. And especially when you've got two guys like Moore and Gray on the Notre Dame's secondary who are really great coverage guys, the receivers need to be running perfect routes. They need to be in sync, and they need to know where the ball's going to be thrown from Carson Beck. Next, another key to the game. I mean, this is as obvious as anything else. It's the defense and the defense. We obviously know what happened last year, and while changes have been made, are they going to be enough? Do we know if Xavier Lucas, um, OJ Federic, all these guys that we've brought in, Jacoby, are they going to prove to be worth it? These transfer portal guys. My hope, from what we've heard, they are, you know. Um, but if the defense doesn't show up, oof, it's gonna be a long, long night. Again, I have the more I've poured into this game, the more I've looked at this game. I am giving Notre Dame a lot more credit than I maybe was a week ago, a month ago, definitely more than 6 months ago. Um, And so our defense needs to show up. If our defense doesn't show up, if we're even remotely close to what we were last year, it's not going to work. I think it's got to be with this defense specifically. It's got to be talent over tactics. Just go out there and play ball. Quit. No more stunting, which apparently we've gotten rid of. We just need to go out there, show them what we're made out of, show them what our guys are, because we've got some dogs. I mean, a lot of our players, Justin Scott, Ruben Bain, these guys were super touted recruits just a few years ago. And if we can't dominate on that D line, again, it's going to be really tough. You got to make CJ Carr be super uncomfortable. You got to make him move out of the pocket. And then the defense needs to be on the same page. We've got to limit the communication issues. It's a lot of new players playing together for the first time. And if we're not on the same page, if we aren't able to make the adjustments that we're going to make, I mean, because again, other than CJ Carr, a lot of the playmakers on that offense are veterans. They've played together. They know this is just another game for them, especially considering the fact again they just played the national championship. A lot of these guys. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this defense stacks up against them. So, what is my pick? I mean, obviously, go with the Canes, baby. I'm not going to give a score. Touchdown, Jesus. I'm sorry. I know you're normally cheering for Notre Dame, but we need you here. I think, I hope it would be nice for it to be a blowout like 2017. Weather being a factor, I think both teams are going to want it. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. Again, not going to give a score, but I'll say it's within one score. The game will definitely be within one score. All right. Moving over. Probably a less sexy game than you're probably wanting to see. I know it doesn't draw a bunch of eyes, but Virginia Tech versus number 13 South Carolina. This was a game I wanted to feature mainly for the fact Virginia took us to the buzzer, overtime basically, took a Hail Mary to be called back for us to beat them. A lot of their games were like that. A lot of their games were one possession games, lost late in the game. This is a team that is rebuilding, but more importantly, that's just the ACC side of it. You want to look at the other side of it, the South Carolina side of it. This is a team that was in the hunt for the playoffs last year and is hovering around the same place we are. So this could be a team that we're either vying to get into the playoffs against, or it could be a team we actually end up playing in the playoffs. So I wanted to feature this game. Shane Beamer's going up against his alma mater this Sunday in Atlanta. This is one of 4 week 1 matchups between ACC and SEC schools. Sadly, I think the SEC is going to get the better of us ACC teams, but I want to again highlight this because it may not seem sexy on the surface, but the outcome of this game will absolutely have a ripple effect all the way to the college football playoffs. I think so. It'll have ACC ramifications. I think it'll have SEC ramifications, not in the sense that it'll affect their SEC conference record, but again, you don't want to slip up at the first game, right? And especially playing a competitive team, they're not playing, Old Dominion as their first game, USC or Virginia Tech. They're playing relatively competitive teams, right? Now, South Carolina, who finished 9-4 with a loss to Illinois in the Cheez-It Bowl, and was in the mix towards the end of last season CFP, with a lot of experts saying they could have made a run and this year could make a run. On the other side, you have Virginia Tech, who is a team who is desperately trying to claw their way back to relevancy on the back of QB Kyron Drones. Kyron Drones, I think everyone's waiting for him to have a breakout season and really prove his worth. This guy is like Cam Ward Jr., apparently. I mean, they're cousins, so the association and the comparison isn't too far off, but I think it's his year. He's got to do something. I mean, I think Virginia Tech is one of those schools that has been struggling to be consistent in their winning ways. And this is a program that does have winning ways. So can they do it with Kyler Jones? South Carolina was a top 10 defense last year, but lost a ton, including 3 linebackers, 4 of their 5 D linemen. And the defense needs to shut down the Virginia Tech run game. I mean, that's going to be a crucial part of this game. I think Virginia Tech will be without Bashul Tootin. They're going to be out with their Tutton, their old running back, who is now playing on Sundays. And they're going to have to rely on the tandem of Marcellus Hawkins and Terrion Stewart to push that rock. And if they're going to get the ground game going, that's also going to open up for Drone's superpower, which is the play action, which he has a 90+% ranking in. So when Virginia Tech can get this play action going, when they can establish a run game, Kyler Drones can shine. And I think that's going to be a really big facet of it. But Tech won't be the only team with a mobile quarterback. I know it's taken me, I'm burying the lead here, but South Carolina has a Heisman hopeful in Lenora Sellers, who can not only beat you with his feet, but has deep threat ability. This guy's got a cannon for an arm, ranking 4th in FBS last season, right? But Sellers isn't Superman. He will need to be more accurate, specifically on passes that are under 20 yards, where he ranked 87th last season. He will hopefully protect the ball more because his 11 fumbles last year, not the best. That was the second highest among P4 quarterbacks, Power 4 quarterbacks. So, what are some of the key matchups I think going into this game? I think it's going to be the Virginia Tech defense versus this mobile quarterback with a deep threat ability, right? While having a top 30 defense overall, Virginia Tech struggled with explosive plays, ranking 85th, and especially they struggled against dual threat quarterbacks. Again, this is not a recipe for success for Virginia Tech, and is going to be a key factor in it. I think USC wins, not USC as in Southern Cal, but University of South Carolina wins if Sellers has a breakout day and the front seven on defense contain drones and the Tech running game. I think if that happens, you see South Carolina win. However, there is a small probability that Virginia Tech could win. And if they win, this is what I think has to happen. I think they need to make Sellers a statue in the pocket. Don't give him room. Have those edges contain the side, minimize the explosive plays, and force Sellers to make these short, intermediate passes. Don't let him go over the top, right? Make sure your safeties are playing strong, right? And dominate. Dominate the time of possession. Keep Sellers off the field. I think if they can do that, I think if Virginia Tech wins, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see the pocket collapsing and staying there, and he's not able to break out. You're going to see them close the top off. They're not going to let him throw down the field, and then they're going to keep him off the field as long as possible. That's it. I'm picking South Carolina by 10, man. I want Virginia Tech to win. I would love to see that for the ACC, but sadly, I think South Carolina is too talented. They're going to have the best player on the field in Lenore Sellers. This guy made other college kids look like children when he played them. Just stiff arming like 5-star cornerbacks and safeties. It's wild. It's wild. And so I think, again, I'm picking South Carolina by 10. Moving over to our second SEC versus ACC, we have two teams who will be debuting quarterbacks who arrived after the spring. Yes, that's right. You heard me. Both these teams will have quarterbacks who were not involved in spring practices whatsoever. I would say this was going to be a definitive pre-spring. I would have said absolutely this is going to be an easy win for Tennessee. Now, with Nico Imaliava leaving for UCLA, I've got a lot of questions, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, technically for both teams, right? So on one side, you have Syracuse, who lost almost their entire offensive assets in Kyle McCord, all three starting wide receivers, and their running back in LaQuinton Allen Jr., right? They basically had their team gutted. A lot of teams did. You're going to see this as a recurring thing. And we can't talk about this game without addressing the big story of the spring, which was Nico Imaliava's departure to UCLA. You couple that with the exit of 3 out of 5 top reception players and the draft taking your workhorse in Dylan Sampson, Tennessee is going to have a ton of questions heading into Atlanta. But both teams got portal pick-me-ups. So you got Joey Aguilar in Knoxville, right? He actually switched spots with Nico Imaliava. He was originally at App State, then transferred to UCLA. And when Nico said he was going to UCLA, he was like, all right, cool, I'm going to take your old job and go to Knoxville. And then over on the other orange sideline, you'll have former Notre Dame backup Steve Angeli leading the offense at Syracuse. Great pickup. Now, while I think Syracuse has the superior QB, Angeli won't be playing defense, and he isn't going to be the whole team. And I think Tennessee is just going to be a little too deep to trip up in their opener. However, Tennessee's quarterback isn't exactly the safest bet, racking up 51 turnover-worthy plays last year. Aguilar is a little bit of a gunslinger. No other quarterback had over 40, by the way. So Aguilar could be a little bit of a liability. Hopefully, Hupel just keeps this guy in check, gives him the playbook, says, do not diverge from this whatsoever and protect the ball, right? I mean, if I'm Josh Heupel, I am absolutely pounding the rock, not looking back. It was our formula for winning last year. Get this guy some confidence, maybe get this guy in some opportunities to throw the ball at maybe medium range. Don't let him go too far because this guy does love to sling it, and secure that victory. My pick at the end of the day, Tennessee is favored by 13.5. I think it's actually going to be far closer than that. I'm going to say 24-17 Tennessee. Not a good day for ACC so far. Moving over to our third ACC SEC matchup. I think this may be the most one-sided game we're going to see all week in week one. And I couldn't even use last year as a frame of reference to call this game because you have two teams looking to bounce back in completely different ways. Completely different ways. Both looking to bounce back, though. Alabama coming off its first four-loss season since 2007. And, well, sadly, we all know what happened in Tallahassee last year. FSU only winning 2 games. Brutal. Now, as FSU quarterback Thomas Castellanos so eloquently put it, Nick Saban may not be at Bama anymore, but the Crimson Tide still have an elite defense. Alabama ranks second in PFF's defensive line and secondary rankings. They are coming in hot and ready. I call them Little Caesars, right? They also have what I'm considering to be a top 10 linebacker room. Alabama is also the only school in college football that features a top 10 player at every defensive position. Now, again, what do they have after that? We don't know. But their starters are pretty much top 10 players at every position. On the opposite side of the ball, we know the Crimson Tide won't be lacking offensive weapons, but you have for the first time starter Ty Simpson behind center. Speaking of center, you have a top 5 O-line protecting him and a bevy of wide receivers that any team would pay top dollar for, including one of our former guys, Isaiah Horton. Needless to say, Alabama should not be struggling to move the ball whatsoever this year. Bama is nearly a two touchdown favorite with them sitting at 13.5 favorite. I don't think there's a single person who watches college football and believes that FSU can actually pull off the upset. But let's just play a game of what ifs because we don't want to just say Alabama's going to win this. So, Bama's weakness last year was a mobile quarterback. Ask Diego Pavia. Oklahoma and USF, yes, I said that right. USF had their QBs run for over 120 yards in each of their matchups. The 3 other teams that they struggled against with dual quarterbacks had over 50 yards in each of those games. Now, you juxtapose that to Gus Malzahn and Tommy Castellanos, and you have a recipe for disaster. This could be a little bit of a threat to Alabama. Castellanos, despite losing the starting job in Boston, still ranked in the top 10 for rushing QBs in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, he actually was the number 2 behind Jaden Daniels for quarterback rushing yards. The only way I see this not being a complete bloodbath is if Castellanos stays clean and is able to extend drives with his feet, converting crucial third down plays, which is what plagued Bama last year, specifically in that Vandy game, which I was just mentioning. I think Gus Malzahn studied the crap out of that Vandy game and will probably use a similar tactic against Bama this year to try and remain competitive. Now, the longer they can keep Simpson and co off the field, the closer I think the game will be. I think the addition of DC Tony White from Nebraska for FSU will hopefully bring some life to a defense that struggled. But sadly, I just don't think there's just enough there. My pick in this game, I've got Alabama by a lot. I'm going to say, FSU struggled to put up 21. Let's go 35-14. 35-14, Bama. Next, we have what could be the Doppelganger Bowl. This is a battle of 2 teams that are just constantly mirror each other. You've got Death Valley, Tiger versus Tiger. Brian Kelly versus Dabo, those aren't the same, but you see where I'm going with this. Another mirror would be 2 elite QBs. Both QBs are tied for second place in the Heisman race. Both are lacking a proven running back room. They both love to throw the ball, 60-40 roughly, breakdown of each one. I think the key matchups for this game with Clemson and LSU will be Clemson's veteran wide receivers versus a questionable LSU secondary that ranked 88th in passes allowed. LSU went and got Virginia Tech's cornerback Mansour Delane. They stole NC State's safety to Marcus Cooley and grabbed Houston safety AJ Halsey. They'll also be bringing in freshman DJ Pickett, who we desperately tried to get, but we will see how that works out. My prayer is that Clemson wipes the floor with them. DJ Pickett has a rough year there, realizes that's not the place he wants to be, and will transfer over to Miami. But back to the Clemson at LSU game. Another facet I'm looking at is LSU's O line, right? They were gutted by the NFL draft. And can these newbies that are playing for LSU step up and take on a veteran D line? Clemson boasts one of the best defensive lines in college football, largely thanks to defensive tackle Peter Woods, who's one of the best overall players in the game, and edge defender TJ Parker. They're both top 10 players in the nation and are projected to be the best prospects at their respective positions in the 2026 NFL draft. So, got some questions going into this game. Specifically for LSU, I want to look at how does LSU's O-line stack up against this dominant D-line. Now, while um, Clemson's D-line is stout and they're full of talent, they did struggle against the rush. The problem is LSU doesn't like to run the ball. And LSU lost 4 of its 5 starters last year. So what is going to happen next? Is LSU secondary going to show up? Last year, they were 95th in coverage grade, 103rd in explosive plays allowed. This was a team that just very similar to UM last year, just was constantly giving up major plays, keeping teams in the game. This is the reason why LSU has missed the playoffs and the national championship the last couple of years. DJ Pickett went there, I think, to hopefully bolster this team. But again, can he do it by himself? I don't know. Will these transfer portal guys step up and bring LSU back to glory that they're used to having, the DBU that the LSU is known for being? That's something that's going to happen. Can LSU be more balanced? I think that's crucial. I think LSU was not able to run the ball. They didn't like running the ball last year. LSU leaned on the pass 60-40. And if they can't establish this run game, I don't know, man. I just don't know. Nussmeier is an incredible quarterback. Garrett Nussmeier, he's a Heisman hopeful, but again, I look back at the Ole Miss game last year and some of those struggles and how he had to make a comeback. I just look at the South Carolina game. I mean, they're games that they won, but games that could have gone either way. And you imagine how those games would have gone had they had a dominant rusher or even someone who just kept them in the game, rushing wise, keeping them off the field, right? And think about it. If you can get your running back to show up, that forces Clemson to stack the box. That forces them to be honest. And that's what LSU needs to do to win this game, I think. Questions for Clemson. How it's again, this is the Doppelganger Bowl. How is their run game? Is their rushing attack going to be a factor? We know that we got Cade Klubnik and they've got a bevy of wide receivers who are veterans and ready to really show the college football world what they're about. But can Adam Randall, who was just recently named the starter, can we expect him to fill the role left by Phil Maffa, who was a 1,000-yard rusher last year? I mean, does Randall have it in him? My hope is yes, for the sake of the ACC and Clemson, but we don't know. You know, Randall is a converted wide receiver who Dabo feels has the explosive talent to keep the defense honest, but he's not your prototypical running back. Again, we've seen this in the past. That's okay. You know, Florida did it. But we're gonna have to see what Clemson can do. Keys to the victory for Clemson here. I really, it's just one simple thing: abuse the LSU O line. Get to Garrett Nussmeier. Let him be completely uncomfortable. Don't let him get the ball. Don't let him be comfortable in the pocket. And you force these sacks. You force pressure. I think keys to the victory for LSU: don't get into shootouts. Listen, if you allow Cade Klubnik to just constantly throw the ball and stay in this game, it's not going to be good for LSU. You've got to force Cade to throw the ball really bad, one, and you've got to shut down the run game. Hey, bud. Okay, I need you to go to bed. I know. Go tell mommy. She'll go fix it, okay? Can you close my door? Okay. Thanks, bud. Keys to victory for LSU. So, um, don't get in shootouts. you gotta, you've got to take Cade Klubnik off the board. You got to take Clemson out of this game as quickly as possible. Run the ball. You know, Clemson, while their D line is expected to be dominant, they did struggle from time to time against really good rushing attacks. So, establish a run game. Let Nussmeier be the quarterback that you know he is, but keep Cade Klubnik off. Force him to get off the field as quickly as possible, as fast as you can. Shut down that game. Who am I picking in this game? I'm picking the Tigers. I'm kidding. I pick Clemson. I'm going Clemson. I think Clemson they're at home. I think they've just got too much going for them, and I think there's just far too many questions for LSU. LSU has lost its 5 last openers. I think it's going to be 6. It's a culture thing, I think. I don't trust that secondary right now. I could be wrong after week 1. We're going to see. But as of right now, I'm going Clemson. I'm going to say it's a close one. I do think, and this is why I said keys to victory, don't get into a shootout. I think it kind of will be a shootout. And I'm going to say 35-31 Clemson. That's who I'm picking. Last but not least, it is the game of the week. Check that. The game of the season. Maybe not for me, but for the rest of college football, it is the game of the season. It is number 1 Texas heading to the Horseshoe to take on defending national champs, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Texas enters 2025 as one of the nation's most complete teams, ranking top 10 nationally in scoring defense, averaging 15.3 points per game, and dominating up front with a ferocious defensive line rotation that's gotten 46 sacks last year, led by edge Colin Simmons, who posted 9 sacks as a freshman. This guy is an animal. We have 2 highly anticipated but unproven quarterbacks making their debut for their teams as the leading men. And while many will tout this as Manning versus Sayan, here are what I believe are the key matchups for this game. Number 1, Arch Manning versus Caleb Downs. Everyone always likes to say it's going to be quarterback versus quarterback. It's never quarterback versus quarterback because the 2 quarterbacks are never on the field at the same time. So what I think is it's going to be Arch Manning and Caleb Downs. That's going to be the key matchup. It is going to be the offensive play caller versus the defensive play caller or general or leader, whatever you want to call them. I obviously know Arch Manning and Caleb Downs are not calling plays for their respective sides, but we'll call them the leaders then. And it's the mental games, it's the mind games that the 2 are going to be playing with each other to try and outwit, outsmart, and outplay each other. I think Arch needs to know where number 2 is at all times, or he may find himself in serious trouble, whether that's a sneak blitz or a quick pick. Downs, who made the game stealing interception in last year's Cotton Bowl, will lead a top 5 secondary in college football. He will be leading some troops that I think will be making it a hard time for Arch's first start. It's never easy, starting against a team like Ohio State, but in the Horseshoe, that is really tough. I think helping Downs will be Davidson Igbendusen. Wow, that was a really rough one. Who enters his 3rd year as a starter in Ohio State secondary, and Jermaine Matthews Jr., who played 47 snaps last year in the Cotton Bowl, allowing just 4 catches for 7 yards. So this guy may not have been a starter during the season last year, but he made his presence felt in the Cotton Bowl. Stating the obvious, this is going to be Arch Manning's biggest test all year, and I think it's how this matchup goes, so will the game. I think the second key matchup for this game will be Texas's young O-line versus Ohio State's new front 7. Texas is seeing a revamped offensive line, returning only one of last year's 5 starters to the roster. The only returning starter lineman is right guard DJ Campbell. Ohio State, on the other hand, is replacing its 2 top defensive ends from last season in JT Tumalo and Cotton Bowl hero Jack Sawyer. They will also be starting 2 new D tackles in Caden McDonald and Edric Houston. While both are highly regarded and talented, the depth after them leaves more to the imagination. They do not have depth in this position. So We will have to see how that fares out. Third, last and not least, Ohio State's star-studded wide receiver core versus Texas secondary, which is arguably one of the best, if not the best in the nation. Texas's Anthony Hill Jr. is college football's top returning linebacker. Michael Taff is a top 5 starting safety, and Malik Muhammad is the 6th ranked cornerback. The Longhorns defensive line came in 10th in PFF's rankings and features the best edge defender in the nation in sophomore Colin Simmons, who we mentioned earlier. On the other side, you have the best player in college football in Jeremiah Smith, who didn't have the most spectacular showing the last time these two faced off. Now, expect to see him get a lot more targets this go around, and I think he's probably going to have some very key reception. Also returning for this game will be Carnell Tate, who had the exact opposite experience, going 7 for 87 against the Longhorns last year in the Cotton Bowl. And don't be surprised if you see Ohio State utilize transfer tight end Max Clare. He's from Purdue. This guy's a big body. He went for 685 yards last year and averaged about 13 and a half yards a catch. This guy's ready to basically break through and really, I think, be a weapon for Justin Saying. And again, I know we talked a lot about Arch. I think he's crucial in this game, but Julian Sayin is going to be just as crucial. I think what's lucky for Julian Sayin is he has some more proven weapons who will make the job easier for him. Not to say Arch doesn't. Arch has Wingo and some other guys that he can throw to. But I think Julian Sayin will have the easier go out as the quarterback, which is why he probably wasn't mentioned as much in this. They're not going to rely on Julian Sayin as much, hopefully as much. My pick for this game, this was tough. This was like basically a coin flip for me, but I'm going to go something off the field. And I am picking Texas because I like the coaching continuity over at Texas. Ohio State is replacing both their offensive coordinator and Chip Kelly, and they're bringing in Matt Patricia for the defensive coordinator, who left for, I believe it was Penn State. I just don't like that. I think coaching continuity is crucial, especially when you've got the level of talent that these guys have got. I think it'll, like I said, be a close game. I'm going to say it'll be a low scoring game. Let's shoot with 24-17 Texas in the horseshoe for the upset. I like the way Texas travels. They did great against Michigan last year. I think they beat them the last time they played in the horseshoe. Pretty sure that was back in 2022. So yeah, I got Texas. And I think this could be a rematch for the CFP. We'll see a little bit down the road later on this season. Well, guys, we have got another one in the books. Thank you all for watching. Until next week, be good, y'all. Win the weekend. And as always, go Canes. We'll see you guys Sunday for the recap. Be good, y'all.